What if a security camera revealed your spouse's dark secret? 72-year-old Martha discovers her husband's true nature when footage shows him abusing their beloved German Shepherd. Watch her journey from betrayal to courage. Subscribe now and comment where you're watching from. Martha Thompson had always been a picture of composure. At 72, her silver hair was always neatly styled in a soft bob that framed her kind face, marked with wrinkles that spoke of decades of smiles and wisdom imparted to generations of students at Oak Ridge Elementary. Today, however, as she pulled her modest sedan into the circular driveway of her Victorian home in Willowbrook, Minnesota, something felt off. The 3-week trip to care for her sister Elaine in Rochester after hip surgery had been exhausting, but necessary. Richard, her husband of 42 years, had insisted he would be fine managing the house and Kaiser, their 5-year-old German Shepherd. "I've survived this long without you babysitting me, Martha." He'd joked with that trademark wink that still made her heart flutter, even after all these years. Martha gathered her luggage and breathed in the crisp autumn air, noting how the maple trees lining their property had begun their transformation into brilliant orange and crimson. The house looked immaculate as always. Richard, the retired bank manager and pillar of the community, kept everything in perfect order. "Richard," she called, pushing open the heavy oak door. "I'm home early. Elaine's daughter came to stay, so I thought I'd." Her words died in her throat as Kaiser limped into the foyer. Martha dropped her suitcase with a thud. "Oh my God," she whispered, kneeling despite her arthritic knees to examine the dog. Kaiser's once lustrous coat was dull and patchy. His ribs protruded visibly, and his eyes, usually bright and alert, appeared sunken and listless. When he tried to wag his tail in greeting, Martha noticed how he winced in pain. "Richard," she called again, her voice sharper this time. "Where are you? What happened to Kaiser?" Only silence answered her. Martha stroked Kaiser's head gently, feeling him tremble beneath her touch. A surge of anger rose in her chest, momentarily displacing her confusion. She shuffled to the kitchen, Kaiser limping alongside her. The pristine countertops gleamed under the morning light. A note sat propped against the coffee maker. "Committee meeting at church. Back by noon." Martha filled a bowl with water, which Kaiser lapped up desperately. She rummaged through the pantry for dog food, finding the container nearly empty. As she spooned the remaining kibble into Kaiser's bowl, her mind raced. How could Kaiser have deteriorated so dramatically in just 3 weeks? That's when she remembered the security camera. Emily, their 25-year-old granddaughter, had insisted they install it after a series of break-ins in the neighborhood. "It'll give you peace of mind, Grandma," she'd said, setting up the app on Martha's phone during her last visit. Martha's fingers trembled as she navigated to the app. The system had been recording for weeks now, capturing footage from the living room, kitchen, and back patio. She tapped on the calendar, selecting a random day from the previous week. As the video began to play, Martha's world, a world built on 4 decades of marriage, trust, and shared memories, began to crack beneath her feet. Martha's breath caught in her throat as the footage played on her phone screen. Richard entered the frame, impeccably dressed in his golf attire, khaki pants, and a navy polo that emphasized his still broad shoulders despite his 75 years. He moved with the confident gait of a man accustomed to respect in every room he entered. Kaiser approached him, tail wagging hopefully, nudging a tennis ball toward Richard's feet. "Get away from me, you stupid mutt," Richard snapped, his voice so harsh that Martha flinched. He kicked the ball across the room with unnecessary force. "I told Martha I never wanted a dog. Waste of time and money." Martha's hand flew to her mouth. Kaiser had been her idea after retirement, a companion to fill their quiet house and encourage daily walks. Richard had seemed to warm to him over time, even bragging about Kaiser's intelligence to neighbors at community barbecues. She scrolled to another day. Richard entered with takeout bags, the logo of Giovanni's, his favorite Italian restaurant, clearly visible. He sat at the dining table, spreading out an elaborate meal of veal parmesan and fettuccine. Kaiser approached, whining softly. "You think you're getting some of this?" Richard laughed coldly. "This cost more than you're worth." He ate leisurely, occasionally tossing glances at Kaiser, who eventually retreated to the corner, curling up with his head on his paws. Martha fast-forwarded through days of footage. Not once did she see Richard fill Kaiser's water bowl or food dish. Worse, there were moments when Kaiser would approach Richard, seeking attention, only to be shoved away or, in one horrifying instance, struck with a rolled-up newspaper. "This can't be happening," Martha whispered, feeling nauseous. She looked up to see Kaiser watching her, his loyal eyes somehow understanding. She stroked his head, noticing a small cut near his ear that hadn't been there before her trip. The sound of a car in the driveway jolted her back to reality. Martha quickly closed the app and slipped her phone into her pocket. She took a deep breath, trying to compose herself as the front door opened. "Martha, you're back early," Richard called, his voice warm and pleasant, the voice of the man she thought she knew. He appeared in the kitchen doorway, handsome in his tailored suit, a bouquet of yellow daisies in his hand. "I was just picking these up for you. Welcome home, darling." She accepted the flowers mechanically, searching his face for any trace of the cruel man she'd just witnessed on camera. "Thank you," she managed. "They're lovely." Richard bent to kiss her cheek, then frowned at Kaiser. "What's wrong with him? He looks terrible." The casual concern in his voice made Martha's blood run cold. "You tell me, Richard," she said quietly. "He was perfectly healthy when I left." Richard shrugged, loosening his tie. "He hasn't been eating much. Probably missing you. You know he's always been your dog." "My dog," Martha repeated, the words tasting bitter. "But your responsibility while I was away." Richard's eyes narrowed slightly, a flash of something dark crossing his features before his expression smoothed into practiced concern. "I fed him every day, Martha. Maybe he's sick. We should call the vet." Martha stared at her husband of 42 years, suddenly feeling like she was looking at a stranger. The foundation of trust that had supported their marriage was cracking beneath her feet, threatening to collapse entirely. "Yes," she said finally. "I think we should call Dr. Cole immediately." As Richard reached for his phone, Martha caught a glimpse of herself in the hallway mirror. A small, aging woman with trembling hands and a heart breaking in slow motion. The woman in the reflection had a decision to make, one that would alter the course of her golden years and test every value she'd held dear throughout her life. Dr. Jessica Cole was not what Martha had expected when they first met a year ago. The young veterinarian, with her tattooed forearms and streak of purple in her dark hair, seemed out of place in their conservative Midwestern town. But her gentle handling of Kaiser and obvious passion for animal welfare had quickly won Martha over. Now, as the 34-year-old vet examined Kaiser in the sterile examination room of Willowbrook Animal Clinic, Martha washed her face carefully. Richard stood beside her, one hand resting protectively on Martha's shoulder, a gesture that once brought comfort but now felt like a performance. "Kaiser is suffering from malnutrition and dehydration," Dr. Cole said finally, her voice clinical but with an undertone of something harder. "He has several small lacerations that are infected, and there's bruising along his ribcage that suggests trauma." "Trauma," Richard echoed, his voice perfectly calibrated to convey shock. "What are you suggesting, doctor?" Dr. Cole met his gaze steadily. "I'm not suggesting anything, Mr. Thompson. I'm stating medical facts. Kaiser has lost 15 pounds since his checkup 2 months ago. That doesn't happen spontaneously. He probably got into something while we weren't looking," Richard offered, squeezing Martha's shoulder. "Martha was away caring for her sister, and I've been busy with the church building committee. You know how dogs can be." Martha felt something snap inside her. "Stop it, Richard," she said quietly. Both Richard and Dr. Cole turned to look at her. "Excuse me." Richard's voice held a warning note that Martha recognized from the rare occasions she'd challenged him publicly over the years. "I said stop it. Stop lying." Martha's voice trembled but grew stronger with each word. "I saw the footage from our security camera. I saw how you treated Kaiser when I was gone." Richard's hand dropped from her shoulder as if burned. His face remained composed, but a muscle twitched in his jaw. "Martha, what are you talking about? What footage?" "The security camera Emily installed last month," Martha said. "I watched it this morning. I saw you ignoring him, refusing to feed him. I saw you hit him." Dr. Cole busied herself examining Kaiser's ears, but Martha could tell she was listening intently. Richard laughed, though the sound held no warmth. "That's ridiculous. The camera must be malfunctioning. Or perhaps—" He hesitated, then lowered his voice sympathetically. "Martha, you've been under such stress with Elaine's surgery. Maybe you're confused about what you saw." Martha felt her cheeks flush. This was a familiar pattern, Richard questioning her perception until she doubted herself. It had happened when she'd questioned certain charges on their credit card statement, when she'd mentioned his flirtatious behavior with the church secretary, when she'd suggested he'd had too much to drink at the country club. "I'm not confused," Martha said firmly. "I know what I saw." Richard's expression hardened, the mask of concern slipping momentarily. "This is absurd. I've never mistreated that dog. Dr. Cole, I apologize for my wife's accusations. We've been married 42 years, and she's never said anything like this before." 42 years, Martha repeated. "And I trusted you every single day of them. Until today." Dr. Cole cleared her throat, addressing Martha directly. "Kaiser will need a special diet to regain his weight safely. He'll also need antibiotics for the infections and follow-up appointments to monitor his recovery." She hesitated, then added carefully, "Mrs. Thompson, would you like me to document my findings formally?" The implication was clear, documentation that could be used if Martha chose to pursue the matter further. Richard's posture stiffened beside her. "Yes," Martha said, meeting the younger woman's eyes. "I would appreciate that very much." The drive home was silent, the air between them heavy with unspoken accusations. Kaiser sat in the back seat, his head resting on Martha's hand where she reached back to comfort him. As Richard pulled into their driveway, he finally spoke. "You've made a fool of yourself today, Martha. And of me." Martha looked at the beautiful house they'd shared for decades, the garden she'd lovingly tended, the porch swing where they'd watched countless sunsets. It all looked different now, as if a filter had been removed from her vision. "No, Richard," she said, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. "I've finally opened my eyes." The following week passed in a glacial chill that permeated the Thompson household. Martha and Richard moved around each other like wary satellites, maintaining careful orbits that rarely intersected. She slept in the guest bedroom, claiming Kaiser needed constant monitoring. Richard didn't argue, but his silence spoke volumes. Martha devoted herself to Kaiser's recovery, preparing his special meals and administering his medications with meticulous care. The German Shepherd stayed close to her side, as if sensing she needed protection as much as he did. On Wednesday morning, Martha was tending to her prize-winning roses when her neighbor, Judith Harmon, approached the fence that separated their properties. At 70, Judith was the unofficial matriarch of Maple Street, a repository of local gossip and arbiter of social standing. "Martha, dear," Judith called, her voice honeyed with concern. "I haven't seen you at book club. We've missed you." Martha straightened, pushing a stray lock of hair from her forehead. "I've been busy with Kaiser. He hasn't been well." Judith's gaze flicked to the dog resting in a patch of sunlight nearby. "Yes, Richard mentioned something about that at the Rotary lunch. Said the poor thing took ill while you were away." She hesitated, then added carefully, "He also mentioned you've been somewhat distraught since returning from Rochester. Said the stress of caring for Elaine might have affected you more than you realize." Martha's pruning shears stilled in her hand. "Did he?" "We're all concerned, Martha. Richard said you've been making some unusual accusations. At our age, it's important to stay vigilant about cognitive changes." Judith's expression was sympathetic, but her eyes held avid curiosity. Martha felt heat rising in her cheeks. So this was Richard's strategy, planting seeds of doubt about her mental acuity, leveraging the town's respect for him and fear of aging. "How thoughtful of everyone to be concerned," Martha replied evenly. "But I assure you, my cognitive functions are perfectly intact. Kaiser wasn't ill. He was neglected while I was away. I have video evidence." Judith's eyes widened. "Video evidence? Martha, surely you don't mean our security camera captured everything." Richard refused to feed Kaiser or give him water. He struck him on multiple occasions. The words tumbled out before Martha could reconsider the wisdom of sharing them. Judith's expression shifted from concern to discomfort. "Well, I'm sure there's some misunderstanding. Richard Thompson has been Citizen of the Year twice. He's organized the annual charity drive for 20 years. "Yes," Martha said quietly. "He's very careful about appearances." Judith adjusted her gardening hat nervously. "These private matters should stay private, Martha. In my day, we didn't air our marital grievances for the whole town to dissect." "In your day," Martha replied, surprising herself with her sharpness. Women were expected to tolerate anything to maintain a respectable household. I'm too old for that particular charade, Judith. Later that afternoon, Martha's phone rang. It was Emily, her granddaughter. Grandma, are you okay? Mom just called and said something about you and Grandpa having problems. Emily's voice was tight with worry. Martha sighed, settling into her reading chair with Kaiser at her feet. Your grandfather and I are having a disagreement, yes. About Kaiser? Mom said something about security camera footage. Yes. The camera you installed captured your grandfather mistreating Kaiser while I was away. Martha hesitated, then added, quite severely, I'm afraid. There was a long pause on the line. Grandpa? But he's always so perfect. Emily's voice held the confusion of someone having their foundation shaken. Are you sure that's what you saw? Martha's grip tightened on the phone. Emily, I taught third grade for 37 years. I know the difference between a child who's fallen on the playground and one who's been pushed. I know what I saw. Okay, Grandma, Emily said, though doubt lingered in her voice. Do you want me to come visit this weekend? I could help with Kaiser. I'd like that very much, Martha said, feeling a rush of gratitude. And Emily, bring your laptop. I want you to help me download and save that footage. As she hung up, Martha heard the front door open and close. Richard's footsteps moved through the house with familiar precision. He appeared in the doorway of the sitting room, impeccably dressed as always, holding a large bouquet of lilies, her favorite. I thought these might brighten the house, he said, his voice neutral. Martha looked at the flowers, then at the man holding them, the man whose public face and private actions existed in stark contrast. For 4 decades, she had arranged her life around his needs and preferences, had basked in the reflected glow of his community standing. Now, she was faced with the reality that the foundation of their life together might have been built on quicksand. Put them in water if you like, she replied. But flowers won't fix this, Richard. His expression hardened almost imperceptibly. No? Then what will, Martha? What exactly do you want? She met his gaze steadily. The truth. For once in our marriage, I want the simple truth. The Willowbrook Animal Clinic sat at the edge of town, a modern building of glass and steel that stood in stark contrast to the Victorian homes and brick storefronts that characterized the main street. Martha parked her car in the nearly empty lot, Kaiser sitting alertly in the passenger seat. This won't take long, she assured him, scratching behind his ears. His condition had improved visibly in the 10 days since their first visit, his coat regaining some of its luster, his eyes brighter, though he remained underweight. The clinic's reception area was empty except for a teenage girl scrolling through her phone behind the desk. She looked up as Martha entered. Mrs. Thompson, right? Kaiser's appointment isn't until tomorrow. I know, Martha replied. I was hoping to speak with Dr. Cole briefly, if she's available. The girl, Amber, according to her name tag, glanced at the schedule on her computer. She's finishing up with a patient now. I can ask if she has a few minutes afterward. 5 minutes later, Martha found herself in Dr. Cole's small office. The room reflected its occupant, organized but unconventional, with framed veterinary diplomas hanging alongside vintage concert posters. Mrs. Thompson, Dr. Cole greeted her, closing the door. Is Kaiser okay? He's improving daily. Thank you, Martha said, settling into the chair across from the desk. I wanted to discuss something sensitive. Dr. Cole's expression grew serious. She leaned forward, her elbows on the desk. What can I help with? Martha took a deep breath. The situation with Kaiser has grown complicated. My husband is. Well, he's suggesting to people that I'm experiencing cognitive decline. That what I saw on the security footage was a misinterpretation. Dr. Cole's brow furrowed. That's gaslighting, Mrs. Thompson. Gaslighting. Martha repeated the unfamiliar term. It's a form of psychological manipulation, making someone question their own reality, their own perceptions. Dr. Cole's voice held a controlled anger. It's unfortunately common in abusive relationships. Martha flinched at the word abusive. In her generation, that word conjured images of black eyes and bruised arms, not the subtle psychological warfare Richard was waging. I wouldn't call it, Mrs. Thompson, Dr. Cole interrupted gently. Abuse comes in many forms. What your husband did to Kaiser was physical abuse. What he's doing to you now is emotional abuse. Martha felt her throat tighten. My granddaughter is coming this weekend to help me save the security footage. But I'm worried that won't be enough. Richard has such standing in this community. People are already whispering. Dr. Cole was silent for a moment, then opened a drawer and pulled out a file. I've documented Kaiser's condition thoroughly. The weight loss, the lacerations, the signs of trauma. It's all here, with photographs. As a mandated reporter for animal abuse, I'm obligated to file this with the proper authorities. You're reporting Richard? Martha felt a conflicting surge of vindication and dread. I can, Dr. Cole said carefully. Or you can take this documentation and decide what to do with it yourself. But Mrs. Thompson, Kaiser isn't the only one I'm concerned about here. Martha understood the implication. Richard has never been physically violent with me. Emotional abuse often escalates when a victim starts to resist, Dr. Cole said quietly, especially when the abuser feels their public image is threatened. Martha thought about the subtle changes in Richard since her confrontation, the coldness in his eyes, the whisper campaign he'd started, the way he'd accidentally knocked over Kaiser's water bowl that morning. What would you do? Martha asked suddenly. If you were in my position? Dr. Cole leaned back, considering the question. I'd ensure my safety first. I'd secure evidence. And I'd find allies, people who believe me and support me. She smiled slightly. You already have one. You barely know me, Martha said, surprised. I know enough, Dr. Cole replied simply. I know you care deeply for Kaiser. I know you're facing an uphill battle against a well-respected man in a traditional community. And I know what it looks like when someone is finally seeing clearly after years of manipulation. She paused. My mother went through something similar when I was in high school. Martha felt an unexpected kinship with the younger woman. What happened? She left him, Dr. Cole said. It was hard, financially, socially, emotionally. But 5 years later, she told me it was the best decision she ever made. As Martha drove home, Kaiser dozing beside her, she mulled over Dr. Cole's words. At 72, she had never imagined facing such a crossroads. Her generation had been raised on the sanctity of marriage, on maintaining appearances, on keeping private matters private. The driveway was empty when she arrived home. Richard was at his weekly golf game. Martha felt relief at his absence as she helped Kaiser from the car. Inside, she moved through the familiar rooms with new awareness, noticing how many of the decorative choices reflected Richard's preferences rather than hers. The dark mahogany furniture he'd insisted on, the hunting prints she'd always secretly disliked, the formal dining room they used only when entertaining his business associates. She climbed the stairs to the guest bedroom, where she'd been sleeping since her return. Her few personal items, a book of poetry, her reading glasses, a framed photo of her sister, looked out of place against the generic decor. For the first time, Martha allowed herself to imagine a different life. A smaller home, perhaps, filled with things that brought her joy. Morning coffee on a porch with Kaiser at her feet. No need to maintain appearances or walk on eggshells. The thought was terrifying and exhilarating. Martha picked up her phone and texted Emily. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. Bring an extra suitcase when you come. There are some things I'd like you to take for safekeeping. Emily arrived on Friday afternoon, her compact SUV kicking up gravel as she pulled into the Thompson driveway. At 25, she was the spitting image of Martha in her youth. The same determined chin, the same analytical gaze that missed little. The only physical trait she'd inherited from the Thompson side was her height, towering at 5'10" like her father and grandfather. Kaiser bounded toward her as she stepped from the car, moving with more energy than he'd shown in weeks. Hey, big guy. Emily knelt to ruffle his fur, then looked up at Martha with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. He's looking better, Grandma. He's resilient, Martha replied, embracing her granddaughter. Thank you for coming. Inside, Martha had prepared tea and banana bread, Emily's favorite since childhood. They settled in the sunroom, the afternoon light casting dappled shadows through the surrounding oak trees. Dad called me, Emily said, cradling her teacup. He said I shouldn't get involved in whatever's happening between you and Grandpa. Martha felt a pang of guilt. Thomas, her son, had always idolized his father. What did you tell him? That I'm 25 years old and can make my own decisions. Emily's expression was resolute. Besides, I'm the one who installed that camera. I need to see what it recorded. Martha nodded, retrieving her phone. I've marked several days when the worst incidents occurred. I wasn't sure how to download the footage securely. Emily took the phone, her fingers navigating the app with practiced ease. These cloud storage systems keep everything for about 30 days without a premium subscription. She glanced up. Did Grandpa ever access this app? I don't think so. It's only on my phone, and he's never been technically inclined. Emily nodded, connecting the phone to her laptop. Let's make multiple copies. One on my secure cloud drive, one on a USB I'll give you, and one I'll email to myself from a new address we'll create for you. Martha watched her granddaughter work, feeling a surge of gratitude. You believe me, then? Without even seeing the footage? Emily's hands stilled on the keyboard. Grandma, you taught first grade for almost 4 decades. You can spot a lie from a mile away. If you say Grandpa mistreated Kaiser, I believe you. Tears pricked at Martha's eyes. Your father thinks I'm confused. Or worse, Dad sees what he wants to see. Emily replied, her tone matter of fact. He always has. They spent the next hour reviewing the footage Emily had downloaded. Martha found it even more disturbing on a larger screen. The casual cruelty Richard displayed when he thought no one was watching, the stark contrast to his public persona. Jesus, Emily muttered as they watched Richard kick Kaiser away from his chair during a baseball game. I've never seen him like this. Neither had I, Martha said quietly. Not once in 42 years. Emily turned to her. I'm serious. Grandma, has he ever treated you this way? Martha hesitated. Not physically, but there have been moments. Times when I questioned my own memories or perceptions because he insisted I was mistaken. Financial decisions I wasn't fully consulted on. Small humiliations in public that could be brushed off as jokes. Classic emotional abuse patterns, Emily said, and Martha was struck by how similar her words were to Dr. Cole's. Your generation has names for everything, Martha said with a weak smile. Knowledge is power, Emily replied. Speaking of which, we should check the attic. The attic? What? Emily closed her laptop. You mentioned in your text wanting me to take some things for safekeeping. Important documents, family heirlooms, anything you wouldn't want to lose access to if things escalate. Martha finished the thought. Yes, you're right. The attic stairs creaked as they climbed, the space illuminated by a single bare bulb hanging from the sloped ceiling. Decades of family history surrounded them. Holiday decorations, baby furniture, boxes of photographs, and school projects. Martha moved to the far corner where she kept important documents in an old filing cabinet. Marriage certificate, deed to the house, insurance policies, these should all be here. She pulled open the top drawer and froze. It's empty. Emily frowned, peering over her shoulder. Maybe another drawer? They searched the entire cabinet, finding only old tax returns and utility bills. The important documents, those establishing legal ownership and financial standing, were gone. This is concerning, Emily said, her lawyer-in-training mind clearly working. Let's check your bank statements. Downstairs, Martha logged into her online banking account, something she rarely did as Richard had always handled their finances. Her heart sank as she reviewed the balances. This can't be right, she whispered. Our retirement account should have over $300,000. It's showing less than $50,000. Emily's expression hardened. When did you last check the balance? 2 years ago, when we were considering that river cruise in Europe. Martha scrolled through the transaction history, her hands shaking. There have been multiple large withdrawals, and I didn't authorize any of them. A car door slammed outside, followed by the sound of footsteps on the porch. Richard was home. Emily quickly closed the laptop, her voice low and urgent. Grandma, this changes things. This isn't just about Kaiser anymore. We need to move fast. Martha nodded, a strange calm settling over her. The shock of financial betrayal had crystallized something within her, an iron resolve that had been building since she first viewed the security footage. I'll handle Richard, she said, standing as the front door opened. You finish gathering what we need. Emily searched her grandmother's face. Are you sure? I've been a doormat for decades, Martha replied, her voice steady. But I won't be a victim. Not anymore. Richard entered the living room with the confident stride that had always reminded Martha of a peacock, all display and entitlement. He wore his country club attire, pressed khakis, a navy polo shirt, and the Rolex watch Martha had given him on their 30th anniversary. His silver hair was perfectly combed, his tan suggesting hours spent on the golf course rather than at the hospital visiting his sister-in-law. Emily. His surprise seemed genuine as he spotted his granddaughter. What a pleasant surprise. Emily rose to accept his embrace, her posture stiff. Hi, Grandpa. I came to check on Kaiser. Ah, yes. The dog. Richard's smile didn't reach his eyes. Your grandmother has been quite concerned about him. Perhaps excessively so. Martha felt a familiar surge of doubt, the ingrained response to Richard's subtle implications. She pushed it aside, focusing on what she now knew to be true. Emily and I were just discussing our finances, Martha said calmly, watching his reaction. A flicker of something, alarm? Irritation, crossed Richard's face before his expression smoothed. Oh, that's not usually one of your interests, Martha. It is now. Martha held his gaze, particularly the withdrawals from our retirement account. The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut glass. Emily slipped out of the room, murmuring something about checking on Kaiser, but Martha knew she was giving them privacy for the confrontation ahead. Richard lowered himself into his leather armchair. Financial planning is complex, Martha. I've always handled our money because, frankly, you've never shown aptitude for it. $300,000, Richard. Where is it? His laugh was dismissive. It's not missing. I've made some investments. Diversified our portfolio. At our age, we can't afford to be passive with our savings. What investments? Nothing you would understand. Richard's tone was patronizing. Business opportunities through the Rotary Club. A tech startup my golf partner's son is launching. Promising ventures. Martha thought of the empty filing cabinet, the missing documents. And you didn't think to discuss these promising ventures with me? It's my retirement too, Richard. His expression hardened. After 42 years, I thought you trusted me to make these decisions. Apparently, I was mistaken about many things. He leaned forward. Emily told Thomas about this security camera nonsense. Our son thinks you're having a breakdown, Martha. Everyone does. The attempted deflection was so transparent that Martha almost laughed. You can try to change the subject, Richard, but it won't work. Not anymore. Richard's mask of concern slipped, revealing a cold anger beneath. You're making a spectacle of us, Martha. Judith Harmon told me you've been spreading vicious rumors. Do you have any idea how that affects my standing in this community? Your standing? Martha repeated. Is that what matters to you? Not the fact that you abused our dog. Not the fact that you've drained our savings without my knowledge. I never touched that mutt. Richard slammed his hand on the armrest, his voice rising. And I've managed our finances the same way for decades. You never complained before. Because I never knew. Martha's composure cracked. I trusted you. With everything. Our home, our money, our life together. And all this time. All this time what, Martha? Richard's voice dropped to a dangerous softness. All this time I've provided for you. Given you a beautiful home. Made sure you were the envy of every woman in Willowbrook. Martha stared at him, truly seeing him perhaps for the first time. Is that what you think this marriage has been? You providing things for me? What about partnership, Richard? What about honesty? Richard stood abruptly, towering over her. You want honesty? Fine. I've spent 42 years with a woman who's never appreciated what I've sacrificed, who transformed from an attractive young woman into a dowdy, predictable old lady obsessed with gardening and book clubs and neighborhood gossip, who insisted on getting that damn dog when I explicitly said I didn't want the responsibility. Each word was a slap, but Martha didn't flinch. And you've spent those same 42 years becoming increasingly selfish, controlling, and cruel. The difference is, I'm only now seeing it clearly. Martha rose, meeting his glare without wavering. I want access to all our financial records. I want to know exactly where that money went. And I want you to stop spreading lies about my mental state. Richard's laugh was ugly. Or what, Martha? What exactly do you think you can do? The front door opened, and Emily reappeared with Kaiser at her side. In her hand was a USB drive. She can show everyone who you really are, Grandpa, Emily said quietly, starting with the Willowbrook Police Department. Richard's face flushed dark red. Are you threatening me? In my own home. Our home, Martha corrected. And it's not a threat. It's a promise. For a moment, Martha thought Richard might actually strike her. His hands clenched at his sides, his breathing heavy. Then, as quickly as it had erupted, his anger seemed to recede, replaced by the calculated calm she now recognized as his most dangerous state. You're making a serious mistake, he said softly. Both of you. He turned and strode from the room. Seconds later, they heard the front door slam, followed by the screech of tires as his car pulled away. Martha's legs gave out, and she sank back onto the sofa. Emily rushed to her side. "Are you okay? Did he hurt you?" Martha shook her head, her entire body trembling with delayed shock. "Not physically." Emily sat beside her, one arm around her shoulders. "You were incredible, Grandma, but I'm worried about what he'll do next." Martha stared at the door Richard had stormed through, feeling both terrified and strangely liberated. "So am I, Emily. So am I." Kaiser padded across the room and laid his head in Martha's lap, his loyal eyes gazing up at her. She stroked his fur, drawing comfort from his steady presence. "We're going to be okay," she whispered, unsure if she was reassuring the dog, her granddaughter, or herself. "Somehow we're going to be okay." The Willowbrook Harvest Festival had been a town tradition for over a century, transforming the central square into a celebration of autumn bounty every October. Booths selling homemade preserves and crafts lined the perimeter, while carnival games and hay rides occupied the grassy center. The festival's highlight was always the baking competition, where Martha's apple pie had taken first place for 5 consecutive years. This year, Martha stood at the edge of the festivities, Kaiser at her side, feeling like a stranger in the community she'd called home for decades. 2 weeks had passed since Richard had stormed out of their house. He'd returned the next day, coldly civil, sleeping in their bedroom while she remained in the guest room. They moved around each other like wary combatants, neither willing to escalate further, but neither willing to retreat. "Martha, you came." Betsy Collins, the head of the festival committee, hurried over. Her smile seemed forced. "We weren't sure if, well, with everything going on." "I wouldn't miss it," Martha replied, noting how Betsy's gaze darted around, avoiding direct eye contact. "Though I didn't enter the baking competition this year." "Oh." Betsy's disappointment was evident. Martha's absence from the competition had clearly been a topic of discussion. "Well, it's lovely to see you regardless. And Kaiser looks well." "He's recovering," Martha said, watching Betsy's reaction carefully. "Dr. Cole has been wonderful." "Yes, well." Betsy fidgeted with her festival coordinator badge. "Richard has been so generous with the animal shelter fundraiser. He's organizing a special donation drive today, you know." Of course he was. Martha had heard about Richard's sudden passion for animal welfare, a transparent attempt to rehabilitate his image. The news had spread through Willowbrook like wildfire. Richard Thompson, donating $5,000 to the animal shelter, volunteering to walk the shelter dogs, photographed cuddling puppies for the local newspaper. "How wonderful," Martha said, her voice neutral. "If you'll excuse us, Kaiser and I would like to enjoy the festival." As they moved through the crowd, Martha felt the stares and whispers following them. Conversations faltered as she approached, then resumed in hushed tones as she passed. She recognized the dynamic. Richard had been busy, carefully crafting a narrative that cast him as the concerned husband and Martha as the unstable wife. Near the craft booths, Martha spotted Dr. Cole examining handmade pottery. The veterinarian smiled warmly when she saw them. "Mrs. Thompson." "Kaiser." She bent to greet the German shepherd, who wagged his tail enthusiastically. "He's looking so much better. Thanks to you," Martha said, grateful for the genuine welcome. "And please, call me Martha." "Jessica, then." The younger woman straightened. "Are you enjoying the festival?" "I'm trying to," Martha admitted. "Though it seems the festival isn't entirely enjoying me." Jessica's expression turned sympathetic. "Small towns can be brutal when they choose sides. Trust me, I know. Being the tattooed, vegetarian veterinarian who refuses to crop dogs' ears hasn't made me Willowbrook's favorite daughter." Martha laughed despite herself. "I suppose we're both outcasts now." "The best people usually are," Jessica replied with a wink. She hesitated, then added, "A group of us are having lunch at that new cafe on Elm Street after this. Nothing fancy, just some like-minded women who don't quite fit the Willowbrook mold. You'd be welcome to join us." Before Martha could respond, a commotion near the central gazebo caught their attention. Richard stood on the steps, microphone in hand, surrounded by town officials and shelter representatives. A banner behind him read, "Willowbrook Cares for Paws," with Richard's name prominently displayed as the sponsor. "Ladies and gentlemen," Richard's voice boomed through the speakers. "As many of you know, animal welfare has always been a passion of mine." Martha felt a surge of anger so powerful it made her dizzy. Jessica steadied her with a hand on her arm. "You don't have to stay for this," she murmured. "Yes, I do," Martha replied, her voice tight. They moved closer as Richard continued his speech, highlighting his contributions to the animal shelter and his commitment to the community. His performance was flawless, the concerned citizen, the generous benefactor, the pillar of Willowbrook society. When the applause died down, Richard noticed Martha in the crowd. Their eyes met across the distance, a silent challenge passing between them. Then, deliberately, he smiled and beckoned her forward. "And here's my lovely wife, Martha," he called, extending his hand toward her. "Martha, why don't you come up and say a few words? Everyone knows your love for animals." It was a calculated move, designed to force Martha into either a public reconciliation that would undermine her private claims or a public refusal that would make her appear unreasonable. The crowd turned expectantly toward her, murmurs rippling through the gathered townspeople. Martha felt Kaiser press against her leg, a steady, warm presence. She thought of the security footage safely stored on multiple devices, of the financial documents Emily had helped her obtain showing the systematic draining of their accounts, of the quiet strength she'd discovered within herself over the past weeks. She stepped forward, Kaiser at her side, and climbed the gazebo steps. Richard's smile faltered slightly as she approached, clearly not having expected her to accept his challenge. "Thank you, Richard," she said, taking the microphone. Her voice was steady, amplified across the square. "As my husband mentioned, animal welfare is indeed something I care deeply about." Martha turned to face the crowd, conscious of Richard's tense presence beside her. "In fact," she continued, "it was my concern for our own dog, Kaiser, that led me to install security cameras in our home recently. What I discovered has been educational." A hush fell over the crowd. Richard's hand clamped around her wrist, his fingers digging painfully into her skin. "Martha," he hissed, "this is neither the time nor the place." She met his gaze directly. "Remove your hand, Richard. Now." Something in her tone, a steel he'd never heard before, made him release her. Martha turned back to the microphone. "I believe in this community," she said clearly. "I believe in honesty and integrity. And I believe that what happens behind closed doors should reflect who we claim to be in public." She paused, scanning the crowd. "I won't say more today. This is a celebration, after all. But I will no longer participate in pretense, for Kaiser's sake, for my sake, and for the sake of truth itself." She handed the microphone back to the stunned festival coordinator and descended the steps, leaving Richard frozen on the gazebo platform. Jessica waited for her at the bottom, her expression a mixture of shock and admiration. "That was something else. Was it too much?" Martha asked, her composure finally cracking as the adrenaline began to fade. "It was exactly enough," Jessica replied firmly. "Now, about that lunch invitation, I think you could use some friends right now." Martha glanced back at Richard, who was being surrounded by concerned committee members, his controlled public image momentarily shaken. "Yes," she said, turning away from the past and toward a future she was only beginning to imagine. "I believe I could." The Cup and Page Cafe occupied a converted Victorian house on Elm Street, its wraparound porch lined with rocking chairs and potted chrysanthemums. Inside, mismatched furniture and floor-to-ceiling bookshelves created an atmosphere of cozy intellectualism that had made it an instant favorite among Willowbrook's younger residents. Martha followed Jessica through the front door, Kaiser trotting beside them. The cafe's owner, a woman in her 40s with close-cropped gray hair, greeted them warmly. "Dr. Cole, your usual table is ready." She glanced at Kaiser, then at Martha. "And this must be the famous Kaiser and Mrs. Thompson. I'm Elena. All are welcome here, four-legged friends included." Martha was startled by the recognition. "You know who I am?" Elena smiled. "Small town, big gossip. Plus, I've been following your story through the grapevine. Anyone who stands up to Richard Thompson's version of reality has my respect." She led them to a corner table where three women were already seated. Jessica made the introductions. Diane, the high school art teacher who'd caused controversy with an exhibit on gender identity. Meredith, a divorced mother of three who'd opened Willowbrook's first yoga studio. And Renee, a retired professor who'd moved to town 2 years ago to write her memoirs. "We call ourselves the Willowbrook Misfits," Renee explained with a chuckle. "Anyone who doesn't quite fit the town's preferred mold is welcome, especially when that mold was partially shaped by men like your husband," Diane added bluntly. Martha felt an unexpected sense of belonging as she settled into a chair, Kaiser curling at her feet. I'm beginning to realize how much influence Richard has in this town. The old guard always does, Meredith said, passing Martha a menu, until someone challenges them. Over butternut squash soup and artisan sandwiches, Martha found herself sharing the full story. The security footage, the financial deception, the subtle psychological manipulation she'd endured for years without recognizing it for what it was. Classic narcissistic behavior, Renee nodded. I studied personality disorders before switching to literature. The way he's turned it around on you is textbook, Diane agreed. My ex-husband did the same thing during our divorce. Suddenly, I was the unstable one, the unreasonable one. It's gaslighting on a community scale. What will you do now? Meredith asked gently. After that speech at the festival, Richard won't stay quiet. Martha traced the rim of her teacup, considering. I've been asking myself the same question. I'm 72 years old. The thought of starting over is terrifying. More terrifying than staying? Jessica asked. The question hung in the air as Martha's phone rang. She glanced at the screen. It's Emily. Grandma. Emily's voice was urgent. Where are you? At a cafe in town. What's wrong? Grandpa came home from the festival in a rage. He's packing up Kaiser's things, his bed, his toys, his food. He said he's taking him to the shelter because this has gone far enough. Martha's blood ran cold. I'll be right there. She ended the call, her hands shaking. Richard is trying to take Kaiser to the shelter. The women around the table reacted with immediate concern. He can't do that, Jessica said firmly. As Kaiser's veterinarian, I've documented the abuse. The shelter won't accept him without proper owner surrender forms. And he doesn't have those, Martha realized. Because Kaiser is registered in my name, not his. Nevertheless, we should hurry, Renee said, already gathering her purse. Men like Richard are dangerous when they feel their control slipping. The 5 women and Kaiser piled into 2 cars, Martha, Jessica, and Kaiser in Martha's sedan, the others following in Meredith's SUV. As they drove toward the Thompson house, Martha noticed Jessica texting rapidly. I'm alerting the shelter and animal control, the veterinarian explained. Just in case. The driveway was empty when they arrived, the front door standing ajar. Martha rushed inside, calling Kaiser's name, but the house was silent. They've already left, Martha said, panic rising in her throat. Emily emerged from the kitchen, her face pale. He took Kaiser about 10 minutes ago. I tried to stop him, but She gestured to her arm, where a red mark was forming. He pushed me against the wall when I tried to intervene. Martha's fear transformed instantly to fury. He put his hands on you. I'm fine, Grandma. Emily assured her, though her voice trembled. But Kaiser was terrified. Grandpa had to drag him to the car. Which shelter would he take him to? Jessica asked. Probably Willowbrook Animal Shelter, Martha replied. It's where he's been volunteering for his public image rehabilitation. I've already alerted them, Jessica said. They won't accept Kaiser without your consent. As if on cue, Martha's phone rang again, an unfamiliar number. Mrs. Thompson? This is Sandra from Willowbrook Animal Shelter. Your husband is here attempting to surrender your German Shepherd. He claims the dog is aggressive and that you're unable to care for him due to health issues. Martha's grip tightened on the phone. That is absolutely false. Kaiser is registered to me, and I do not consent to his surrender. My husband is retaliating against me for exposing his abuse of the animal. There was a pause on the line. Yes, we've received communication from Dr. Cole about the situation. Your husband is becoming insistent. Would you be able to come to the shelter? We're on our way, Martha replied. The Willowbrook Animal Shelter occupied a modern facility at the edge of town, another recipient of Richard's recent charitable attention. As their small caravan pulled into the parking lot, Martha spotted Richard's Mercedes parked near the entrance. Let me handle this, Jessica said as they exited the car. This is my professional territory. Inside, they found Richard in the reception area, engaged in a heated discussion with a shelter employee. Kaiser sat trembling at his feet, a leash wrapped tightly around Richard's hand. This is ridiculous, Richard was saying, his voice controlled but tense. I've donated thousands to this facility. I'm telling you, my wife is not in her right mind, and this dog needs rehoming. Mr. Thompson, Jessica's clear voice cut through the tension. As Kaiser's veterinarian, I must inform you that removing him from his registered owner constitutes theft." Richard turned, his expression darkening as he took in the group of women behind Jessica, his gaze fixed on Martha. Well, the cavalry arrives." His tone was mocking, but Martha could see the rage simmering beneath his polished exterior. "And with an audience, no less." "Richard," Martha said calmly, "give me Kaiser's leash." "This has gone far enough, Martha." Richard's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "You've embarrassed me publicly. You've undermined my standing in this community. And for what? A dog." "Not just a dog," Martha replied, taking a step closer. "For the truth. For myself. For 42 years of compromises and concessions that I didn't even realize I was making." Kaiser whined, straining toward Martha. Richard yanked the leash, causing the dog to yelp. "Mr. Thompson." The shelter employee stepped forward, alarmed. "Please don't handle the animal that way." Richard's facade finally cracked. "This is my dog in my house, in my town," he shouted. "I've built everything we have. Without me, you'd be nothing, Martha. Nothing." The shelter had gone silent, everyone watching the confrontation with a mixture of shock and fascination. Martha was acutely aware of the witnesses, not just her new friends, but shelter staff and visitors. "You're wrong, Richard," she said, her voice steady. "I let you convince me I was nothing without you. But I've realized something these past few weeks." She extended her hand. "I don't need your permission to exist. Now give me my dog." For a moment, Martha thought Richard might refuse, might escalate the confrontation further. Then, something in his expression shifted, a recognition, perhaps, that he had lost control of the narrative. With a sound of disgust, he thrust the leash at her. "Take him. Take everything. You'll see how well you manage without me." Martha took the leash, immediately kneeling to check Kaiser for injuries. The German shepherd pressed against her, his whole body shivering with relief. Richard straightened his jacket, attempting to reassemble his dignity. "This isn't over, Martha." "Yes, Richard," she replied, rising to her full height. "I believe it is." As Richard stormed out, the shelter employee approached cautiously. "Mrs. Thompson, would you like us to document what just happened? In case you need it for future purposes?" Martha glanced at Jessica, who nodded encouragingly. "Yes," Martha said. "I think that would be wise." Outside, as they gathered in the parking lot, Renee placed a hand on Martha's shoulder. "Martha, dear, do you have somewhere safe to stay tonight? After that confrontation, I wouldn't recommend returning home." Martha hadn't considered this. I don't know. You and Kaiser can stay with me," Jessica offered immediately. "I have a guest room, and my apartment is pet-friendly, obviously." Emily, who had been quiet throughout the confrontation, spoke up. "Or you could come to my place in Minneapolis, Grandma. It's only a 3-hour drive." Martha looked around at these women who had rallied to her side. Some she'd known for years, others she'd met mere hours ago. For the first time in weeks, the fear and uncertainty gave way to something else. Hope. "Thank you," she said. "All of you. I think I'd like to stay in town for now. There's something powerful about facing this where it happens, isn't there?" "There certainly is," Diane agreed. "And you're not facing it alone anymore." Spring arrived in Willowbrook with an explosion of color, daffodils lining the walkways, cherry trees bursting into pink clouds, and tulips standing at attention in carefully tended gardens throughout town. 6 months had passed since that fateful autumn day when Martha first discovered the footage that shattered her world. Martha stood on the porch of her new home, a modest craftsman bungalow just 3 blocks from the town square, watching Kaiser explore the freshly fenced backyard. At 7, the German shepherd had fully recovered from his ordeal, his coat gleaming in the morning sunlight as he investigated a squirrel's path across the lawn. "He looks happy," Jessica observed, joining Martha with 2 steaming mugs of coffee. "We both are," Martha replied, accepting the coffee gratefully. "Though I never imagined I'd have a roommate at 72. Jessica laughed. "Temporary roommate. The contractors said your kitchen renovation should be done by next week." The past 6 months had transformed Martha's life in ways she could never have predicted. After the confrontation at the animal shelter, she had spent 2 weeks in Jessica's apartment before finding the courage to return to the house she'd shared with Richard. By then, he had moved into a suite at the Willowbrook Country Club, leaving behind a house full of memories and a coldly worded letter from his attorney. The divorce proceedings had been swift but brutal. Richard had leveraged his connections in town to make things as difficult as possible, freezing joint accounts, disputing property ownership, even attempting to claim Kaiser as a marital asset. But Martha had unexpected allies. Emily's law school classmate who took her case pro bono, Renee, whose own divorce had educated her on financial strategy, and most surprisingly, Thomas, who had finally seen his father's true nature after witnessing his treatment of Emily. "Have you heard from Richard?" Jessica asked, settling into one of the porch rockers. Martha shook her head. "Not since the final hearing. I heard from Judith Harmon that he's planning to move to Arizona. Too many people here have turned against him, apparently." The community's shift had been gradual but unmistakable. As word spread about the security footage, which Martha had eventually been forced to share with her attorney and several key witnesses, Richard's carefully constructed public image began to crumble. His generous donations couldn't erase the evidence of cruelty captured on camera. "The Willowbrook Gazette wants to interview you for their Women of Strength series," Jessica mentioned. "Elena told me yesterday at the cafe." Martha smiled. "I saw the feature they did on you last month. Veterinarian champions, animal welfare, and community change. Very impressive. You should do it," Jessica encouraged. "Your story has already helped so many women in similar situations." Martha thought about the support group she'd started 3 months ago. Initially just her, Diane, Meredith, and Renee meeting weekly at Cup and Page, but now grown to 15 regular attendees ranging in age from 30 to 84. Women who'd endured emotional abuse, financial control, gaslighting, and the particular challenges of confronting these issues in a small, traditional community. "Maybe I will," Martha conceded, "though I still don't feel like any kind of hero." "That's exactly why you are one," Jessica replied. "You didn't set out to challenge the status quo. You just refused to keep pretending." The sound of a car in the driveway drew their attention. Emily emerged from her SUV, followed by Thomas and his wife Rebecca, all carrying bags and boxes. "Moving day reinforcements have arrived," Emily called cheerfully. Martha descended the porch steps to greet them, Kaiser bounding across the yard to welcome the familiar visitors. Thomas embraced his mother tightly. At 48, he was the image of his father in appearance only. The past months had revealed a depth of character that Richard had always lacked. "The movers will be here with the furniture around noon," he said. "Are you sure you don't want to keep more from the house?" "I'm sure," Martha replied firmly. "Just the pieces we discussed, my grandmother's secretary desk, my reading chair, and the family photos." She had deliberately chosen to furnish her new home with items that carried no association with Richard, a fresh start in every sense. "Mom, you need to see what we found in Dad's safe deposit box," Thomas said, his expression serious. Emily insisted we bring it straight to you. Inside, they gathered around the kitchen table as Thomas opened a thick folder of documents, property deeds, investment certificates, and bank statements for accounts Martha had never known existed. He had almost $200,000 hidden in offshore accounts, Emily explained, pointing to the statements, and property in Florida under his brother's name. Martha felt a strange detachment as she examined the evidence of decades of financial deception. 6 months ago, such a discovery would have devastated her. Now, it merely confirmed what she already knew, that her marriage had been built on lies that went far beyond Kaiser's mistreatment. "Can we recover any of it?" she asked pragmatically. Emily nodded. "The judge already ordered an equal division of all marital assets. With this evidence, we can petition to include these hidden assets as well." "Do it," Martha said decisively. "Not because I need the money, but because it's right." The settlement from the divorce had left Martha comfortable but not wealthy. She had sold the Victorian house, too large and too laden with memories, and purchased the bungalow outright. Her teacher's pension covered her modest needs, and she had discovered a talent for editing that brought in additional income, reviewing manuscripts for a publishing house in Minneapolis. As they unpacked boxes throughout the afternoon, Martha found herself pausing occasionally to absorb the reality of her new life. At 72, she had begun again, a concept that would have terrified her a year ago, but now felt exhilarating. By evening, the small house had begun to take shape as her home. Bookshelves lined the living room walls, filled with volumes Richard had always dismissed as cluttering the house. Her grandmother's quilts brightened the furniture. Kaiser's bed occupied a prime spot near the fireplace. After Thomas, Rebecca, and Emily departed with promises to return the next day, Martha and Jessica sat on the back porch watching fireflies rise from the garden as darkness fell. "I got a call from Elaine today," Martha mentioned, referring to her sister. "She's finally well enough to travel. She'll be visiting next month." "That's wonderful," Jessica replied. "Will she stay here?" "Yes, in the guest room." She was skeptical when I first told her about the divorce. "In our generation, you simply didn't end a 42-year marriage, no matter what." Martha smiled ruefully. But after I sent her copies of the security footage, she sent me flowers with a card that just said, "I'm proud of you." "We all are," Jessica said. "You know, my mother called you an inspiration. She said if she'd had your courage 20 years earlier, she might have saved herself decades of unhappiness." Martha shook her head. "It wasn't courage. It was Kaiser." She glanced at the German shepherd dozing peacefully nearby. "If Richard had treated me the way he treated Kaiser, I might have recognized the truth sooner. But seeing his cruelty directed at a defenseless animal, something in me couldn't accept that." "You saved each other," Jessica observed. "We did," Martha agreed. "And now we have a second chance." The next morning, Martha rose early. She brewed coffee and carried it to the small desk in her study, where her laptop was open to a blank document. The Willowbrook Gazette had agreed to let her write her own piece rather than be interviewed, a first-person account of her journey from denial to awakening. Kaiser padded into the room, pressing his warm body against her leg. Martha scratched behind his ears, then turned to the keyboard and began to type. "At 72, I discovered that it's never too late for truth. Never too late for courage. Never too late to begin again." Outside her window, the cherry tree in her new front yard scattered pink petals across the lawn like promises of renewal, of growth, of life yet to be lived authentically and fully. Martha Thompson had come home to herself at last. Please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and if you've watched until here, comment, "I watched until here," and leave your opinion about this story. Oh, and don't forget to watch the next video that appears on the end screen. It's very emotional.